The forest was alive with the whispers of the wind, the rustling of leaves, and the distant calls of birds. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, where the shadows of ancient trees stretched long and dark across the forest floor. Deep within this wilderness, a small, sleek cat moved with quiet precision. Her fur, a patchwork of gray and black, blended seamlessly with the dappled light filtering through the canopy. She was no ordinary cat. She was a survivor, a creature of instinct and memory. Once she had been a house cat, pampered and loved, but that life felt like a distant dream now. She had been abandoned on the edge of this forest years ago, left to fend for herself. Over time, she had learned to hunt, to hide, and to listen to the rhythms of the wild. Yet, despite her adaptation, she carried with her the faint echoes of her past, the warmth of a human hand, the sound of a familiar voice, the scent of a home she could no longer find. The cat paused, her ears twitching as she caught a faint sound. It was a low, guttural growl, barely audible, but unmistakable. Her muscles tensed and her tail flicked nervously. She knew that sound. It was the sound of danger. Somewhere in the dense undergrowth, a predator was on the move. She crouched low, her green eyes scanning the shadows. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Even the birds had fallen silent. The cat's heart pounded in her chest as she crept forward, her paws making no sound on the soft earth. She needed to find shelter, but the trees offered little protection. The growl came again, closer this time, and she froze. A twig snapped nearby. The cat's fur bristled and she turned her head slowly, her eyes locking onto a pair of glowing amber orbs in the darkness. A wolf! It was larger than any she had seen before. Its fur matted and its teeth bared in a silent snarl. The cat's instinct screamed at her to run, but she knew that would only provoke the beast. Instead, she remained perfectly still, her body pressed flat against the ground. The wolf stepped closer, its breath visible in the cool air. The cat's mind raced. She had faced danger before, coyotes, hawks, even a bear once. But this felt different. This wolf was not just hunting for food, it was hunting for sport. Its eyes gleamed with a cruel intelligence, and the cat knew it was toying with her. Just as the wolf lunged, the cat sprang into action. She darted to the side, her claws digging into the bark of a tree as she scrambled upward. The wolf's jaws snapped shut just inches below her, and she felt the rush of air as it missed her by a hair's breadth. She climbed higher, her heart pounding, until she reached a sturdy branch. Below, the wolf circled the tree, its growls growing more frustrated. The cat stayed there for what felt like hours, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. The wolf eventually gave up and slunk away. But the cat knew it would be back. She couldn't stay in the tree forever. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the forest, she made a decision. She would leave this part of the woods and find a new place to hide. But as she descended the tree and began to move through the undergrowth, she noticed something strange. The forest felt different, quieter, emptier. Even the insects seemed to have vanished. The cat's unease grew with every step. She had lived in this forest long enough to know when something was wrong. Then she saw it, a clearing up ahead, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. In the center of the clearing stood a figure, a human. The cat's breath caught in her throat. It had been so long since she had seen one of them. The figure was kneeling, their back to her, and they seemed to be examining something on the ground. The cat hesitated. Her instincts told her to run, to avoid humans at all costs. But something about this person felt familiar. She crept closer, her curiosity overcoming her fear. As she approached, she noticed the scent, a faint, almost forgotten smell that stirred something deep within her memory. It was the scent of home, The human turned, and the cat froze. It was a woman, her face weathered but kind. She looked directly at the cat, her eyes widening in recognition. "It's you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I thought I'd never see you again." The cat's mind raced. She knew this woman. She had been her owner, the one who had loved her and cared for her all those years ago. But why was she here? How had she found her? The woman reached out a hand, and the cat took a cautious step forward. The tension in the air was palpable, a mix of fear and hope. The cat's instincts warred with her memories. Could she trust this woman? Or was this just another trick of the forest? As the cat moved closer, she noticed something else. The woman's hands were trembling, and there were tears in her eyes. She wasn't just here to take the cat back. She was here to apologize, to make amends. The cat stopped just inches from the woman's outstretched hand. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the weight of the past hanging between them. Then, slowly, the cat leaned forward and pressed her head against the woman's palm. The touch was electric, a flood of emotions that neither of them could put into words. But just as the woman began to smile, a sound shattered the moment. It was the growl of the wolf, closer than ever. The cat's ears flattened, and she turned to see the beast emerging from the trees, its eyes fixed on the woman. The cat didn't hesitate. She stepped between the woman and the wolf, her fur bristling and her teeth bared. She had spent years surviving in this forest, and she wasn't about to let the wolf take the one thing she had just regained. The wolf lunged, and the cat met it head-on. The two animals clashed in a blur of fur and teeth, their snarls echoing through the clearing. The woman watched in horror, unable to move. The cat fought with everything she had, her movements fueled by a fierce determination. She wasn't just fighting for her life. She was fighting for the woman who had once been her world. In the end, it was the wolf who retreated, limping into the shadows with a final, defeated growl. The cat stood her ground, her body trembling but her spirit unbroken. The woman rushed to her side, tears streaming down her face as she gathered the cat into her arms. The forest fell silent once more, the tension dissipating like mist in the morning sun. The cat closed her eyes, her body relaxing for the first time in years. She had found her way back to the one who remembered her, and in that moment, she knew she was home. But as the woman carried her away, the cat couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was watching. Somewhere in the shadows, the wolf's amber eyes glowed once more, and the cat knew that this was not the end. The forest would always be a part of her, and its secrets would never truly let her go. The woman carried the cat gently, her steps careful but hurried as she moved through the forest. The cat's body ached from the fight, but she felt a strange sense of peace in the woman's arms. The scent of her, familiar and comforting, was a balm to the cat's weary soul. Yet even as they left the clearing behind, the cat's ears remained alert, twitching at every sound. The forest was never truly silent, and she knew better than to let her guard down completely. The woman's cabin was not far, nestled at the edge of the forest where the trees began to thin. It was a modest structure, weathered by time but sturdy, with a small garden and a porch that creaked softly underfoot. The cat's heart quickened as they approached. She recognized this place. It was not the home she had known before, but it carried the same warmth, the same sense of safety. The woman pushed open the door and stepped inside, setting the cat down on a soft rug by the fireplace. The cat looked around, her green eyes taking in the room. It was cozy, filled with the scent of herbs and wood smoke. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the walls. The woman knelt beside her, her hands trembling as she examined the cat's wounds. There were scratches and bites, but nothing too severe. The cat allowed the woman to tend to her, her trust growing with every gentle touch. As the woman worked, the cat's mind wandered. She thought of the forest, of the wolf, and of the life she had built there. It had been a hard life, but it had been hers. Now she was back in the world of humans, and she wasn't sure how she felt about it. The woman's presence was comforting, but the cat couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. The forest had a way of pulling her back, of reminding her that she was never truly free of its grasp. The days passed, and the cat settled into a new routine. The woman cared for her, feeding her and tending to her wounds. She spoke softly, her voice a constant murmur that soothed the cat's nerves. But the cat's restlessness grew. She spent hours sitting by the window, staring out at the forest. The trees seemed to call to her, their whispers growing louder with each passing day. One night, the cat awoke to the sound of howling. It was distant, but unmistakable. The wolf. She sat up, her ears pricked and her heart racing. The woman was asleep in her chair by the fire, her breathing slow and steady. The cat hesitated, torn between the safety of the cabin and the pull of the forest. She padded to the door, her claws clicking softly on the wooden floor. The howl came again, closer this time, and the cat's decision was made. She slipped out into the night, the cool air brushing against her fur. The forest was bathed in moonlight, the shadows deep and mysterious. The cat moved silently, her senses heightened. She knew the wolf was out there, and she knew it was looking for her. But she also knew that she couldn't hide forever. The forest was her home, and she had to face whatever it held. The cat followed the sound of the howl, her steps deliberate and cautious. She moved through the undergrowth, her eyes scanning the darkness. The forest seemed to close in around her, the trees towering and oppressive. She could feel the wolf's presence, a heavy weight in the air. It was close. Suddenly, the wolf emerged from the shadows, its amber eyes glowing in the moonlight. It was larger than she remembered, its fur bristling and its teeth bared. The cat stood her ground, her tail lashing and her ears flattened. She wasn't afraid anymore. She had faced this beast before, and she would face it again. The wolf lunged, its movements swift and deadly. The cat dodged, her reflexes sharp. They clashed in a flurry of claws and teeth, their snarls echoing through the forest. The cat fought with everything she had, her movements fueled by a fierce determination. She wasn't just fighting for her life. She was fighting for the forest, for the home she had built, and for the woman who had remembered her. The battle was fierce, but the cat's agility and cunning gave her the upper hand. She landed a blow to the wolf's side, her claws digging deep. The wolf howled in pain, its movements faltering. The cat didn't hesitate. She pressed her advantage, driving the wolf back until it turned and fled into the darkness. The cat stood there, her chest heaving and her body trembling. She had won, but the victory felt hollow. The forest was silent once more, the tension dissipating like mist in the morning sun. She turned and began the long walk back to the cabin, her steps heavy with exhaustion. When she reached the cabin, the woman was waiting on the porch, her face pale and her eyes wide with worry. She knelt as the cat approached, her hands trembling as she reached out. The cat pressed her head against the woman's palm, a silent reassurance that she was okay. The woman gathered the cat into her arms, her tears falling onto the cat's fur. "You came back," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I thought I'd lost you again." The cat closed her eyes, her body relaxing in the woman's embrace. She had faced the forest and its dangers, and she had emerged victorious. But she knew that the forest would always be a part of her, a reminder of the life she had lived and the strength she had found. As the woman carried her inside, the cat felt a sense of peace settle over her. She was home, not just in the cabin, but in the woman's heart. And though the forest would always call to her, she knew that she had found where she truly belonged. The days that followed were quiet, filled with a fragile peace. The cat's wounds healed slowly, and the woman rarely left her side. She spoke often, her voice a soothing murmur that filled the cabin. She told the cat stories of the past, of the days when they had been together before the forest, before the abandonment. The cat listened, her green eyes soft with understanding. She couldn't respond, but her presence was enough. The woman seemed to find solace in it. Yet, even as the cat settled into this new life, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still unresolved. The forest loomed in the distance, its trees dark and imposing. The wolf's howls no longer echoed through the night, but the memory of its amber eyes lingered in the cat's mind. She knew the wolf was still out there, waiting. The forest was not done with her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep, bruised purple, the cat sat by the window, her gaze fixed on the tree line. The woman was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. The cat's ears twitched, catching a sound that made her fur stand on end. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but she knew it immediately. The low, guttural growl of the wolf. Her heart raced, and she turned to look at the woman. She wanted to warn her, to make her understand the danger that was coming, but the woman was oblivious, her back turned as she stirred a pot on the stove. The cat's claws dug into the windowsill, her body tense. She had to do something. Without a sound, she slipped out the door and into the cool evening air. The forest was alive with shadows, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. The cat moved quickly, her senses on high alert. She followed the sound of the growl, her steps deliberate and silent. The wolf was close. She could feel it. When she reached the edge of the forest, she stopped. The wolf was there, its massive form silhouetted against the moonlight. It was watching the cabin, its amber eyes glowing with a predatory intensity. The cat's breath caught in her throat. The wolf wasn't just after her. It was after the woman, too. The cat's instinct screamed at her to attack, to drive the wolf away before it could get any closer. But she hesitated. The wolf was larger, stronger, and more dangerous than ever. She had barely survived their last encounter. If she fought it now, she might not make it out alive. But she had no choice. The woman was in danger, and the cat couldn't let anything happen to her. She took a deep breath, her body coiling like a spring, and then she launched herself at the wolf. The wolf turned just in time, its snarl echoing through the forest. The two animals collided in a blur of fur and teeth, their movements swift and deadly. The cat fought with everything she had, her claws raking across the wolf's face and her teeth sinking into its shoulder. The wolf howled in pain, its massive body thrashing as it tried to shake her off. The fight was brutal, each animal giving as good as they got. The cat's smaller size and agility gave her an advantage, but the wolf's strength was overwhelming. It managed to pin her down, its jaws snapping inches from her face. The cat twisted and kicked, her claws digging into the wolf's underbelly. The wolf yelped and stumbled back, giving her just enough room to escape. She scrambled to her feet, her body trembling with exhaustion. The wolf was wounded, but so was she. Blood dripped from a gash on her side, and her breathing was ragged. The wolf circled her, its eyes filled with a feral rage. It wasn't going to give up. The cat braced herself for another attack, but before the wolf could move, a loud crack split the air. The wolf froze, its ears twitching. The cat turned her head and saw the woman, standing at the edge of the forest, a rifle in her hands. Her face was pale, but her grip was steady. The wolf hesitated, its eyes darting between the cat and the woman. Then, with a final, defiant snarl, it turned and disappeared into the shadows. The forest fell silent once more. the tension dissipating like smoke in the wind. The woman lowered the rifle, her hands trembling. She rushed to the cat's side, dropping to her knees and gathering the trembling animal into her arms. "You brave, brave thing," she whispered, her voice choked with tears. "You saved me." The cat leaned into the woman's embrace, her body relaxing for the first time in what felt like forever. She had faced the wolf again, and this time she had won. The forest had tested her, but she had proven that she was stronger than its shadows. The woman carried her back to the cabin, her steps slow and careful. She tended to the cat's wounds with gentle hands, her touch soothing and familiar. The cat closed her eyes, her mind drifting as exhaustion took over. She knew the wolf might return one day, but for now, she was safe. The woman was safe.